Let me start with a number that made me stop scrolling. 50%. That's how much some companies say they're cutting their AI bills by moving off the usual hardware and onto Amazon's newest chip. And if you run anything AI related, or you're just watching this whole gold rush from the sidelines like most of us, that number should get your attention, because for the last few years, one company has basically owned the AI chip world, and everybody else has been paying whatever price they are told to pay. Amazon just decided it was done playing around, so stick with me here, because in the next few minutes, I'm gonna walk you through exactly what this new chip is doing, who's already using it, and whether it actually lives up to the hype. If you like breakdowns where I do digging so you don't have to, go ahead and hit subscribe now, because it genuinely helps the channel and you will not miss the next video. Alright, let's get into it. So here's what actually happened. Back at the start of December at Amazon's big reInvent conference in Las Vegas, AWS pulled the cover off something called Trainium 3. And the headline detail is that this is Amazon's first AI chip built on a 3nm process. If that phrase means nothing to you, don't worry. All you need to know is that smaller numbers mean more transistors packed into the same space, which usually translates to more speed and less wasted power. It's the same class of manufacturing tech that goes into the fanciest phone processors on the market. The chip is now generally available, which is the boring corporate way of saying anybody can rent it right now, not someday. And the thing they built around it is where it gets interesting. Amazon does not just sell you one chip. They pack up to 144 of these Titanium 3 chips into a single connected system they call TRN3 Ultra Server. Think of it less like a computer and more like a small power plant for AI. That full setup delivers roughly 362 petaflops of compute. I'll spare you the deep math, but that is a genuinely huge amount of number crunching, the exact kind you need to train the big models everyone keeps talking about. Now let me pull out the numbers I think are worth caring about, because a spec sheet can bury the good stuff. Each single Trainium 3 chip puts about 252 petaflops of FP8 compute, and it carries 144 gigabytes of fast HBM3E memory with almost 5 terabytes per second of bandwidth. Now, why do I keep hammering on memory? Because when a big AI model runs, it spends a shocking amount of its time just shuffling data back and forth. If the memory is slow, your expensive chip sits there twiddling its thumbs. So Amazon nearly quadrupled the memory bandwidth compared to the last generation, and that alone does a lot of the heavy lifting. Compared to Trainium 2, which is only a year old, the new Ultra Server delivers up to 4.4 times more compute and around 4 times better energy efficiency and close to 4 times the memory bandwidth. There's also a new piece of networking gear called Neuron Switch that doubles the bandwidth inside each server and cuts the chatter delay between chips to under 10 microseconds. That may sound nerdy, and that's because it is, but it matters because when you're linking thousands of these things together, tiny delays pile up into real money and real waiting. Okay, here's the part the whole video is named after. The chip is fast, sure, but Amazon's real weapon is the price. AWS is claiming customers can cut training and inference costs by up to 50% versus the usual GPU route. And when you dig into the numbers people have put together since launch, it starts to make sense. Reporting around the launch pegs Trainium 3 at roughly $1.80 per chip per hour, while comparable Nvidia hardware sits somewhere between $5 and $6 an hour. That is not a small discount. That is a different category of spending entirely. And then there's another stat that I love here, because it reframes the whole conversation. Amazon says Trainium 3 delivers over 5 times more output tokens per megawatt of power than the previous generation does. In plain English, that means for every unit of electricity you're paying for, you get way more actual AI work out the other end. And since power, not money, now claims are cheap, so let's talk about who's really running this thing. And the list is not made up of small names. Anthropic, the company behind the Claude models, is a major partner. In fact, Amazon and Anthropic are building something called Project Rainier that strung together more than 500,000 of the previous generation Trainium chips into what they're calling the world's largest AI compute cluster. Trainium 3 builds right on top of the proven foundation. And then there's the company called Descartes doing real-time AI video, and they are reporting 4 times faster frame generation at half the cost of GPU. There is Splash Music, whose team said that they cut their training costs by 54% and scaled from a handful of nodes up to 100. Even Amazon's own Bedrock service, the thing a ton of businesses use to run AI models, is now serving real production workloads on Trainium 3, and Amazon says that the majority of the inference traffic already runs on Trainium. And reporting this year says Uber picked up Trainium 3 partly because it came in dramatically cheaper than Nvidia's alternative. When a company that size moves, everybody else in the room notices. So, does this actually threaten Nvidia? Let me be straight with you, because I've seen a lot of overheated takes floating around. Chip for chip, Nvidia's top Blackwell part is still more powerful in raw terms. That is just the plain truth, and pretending otherwise would be silly. But here's the clever bit. When you zoom out of the whole rack, a full 144-chip Trainium 3 Ultra server roughly matches Nvidia's flagship rack level system on the total performance, and it does it for around half the cost per workload. Amazon is not beating Nvidia on the single strongest chip, they're beating them at a total bill for getting the job done. And for most companies, the total bill is the only number that really ever mattered. The market backs up how big a deal this is. Nvidia still owns something like 90% of the space right now, which is an absolutely dominant position by any measure, but one research firm expects that to slide towards 70% by 2030 as Amazon, Google, AMD, and others keep chipping away at it. And Amazon clearly smells blood here. Their CEO said on a recent earnings call that the company is sitting on more than $225 billion in Trainium-related commitments. That is not a side project or a science experiment. That is a serious, fully funded assault on the most profitable corner of the entire tech industry. So what's coming next? Amazon is not slowing down either. They already teased Trainium 4, which they are designing to bring at least 6 times the processing performance in one format and triple the FP8 performance, plus a lot of more memory bandwidth on top. The really telling move is that Trainium 4 is being built to play nicely with Nvidia's own high-speed connection tech, so you could actually mix Amazon and Nvidia hardware in the same rack. That tells me Amazon is confident enough to stop treating this as an all-or-nothing war and just start handing customers the best of both worlds. So, where do I land in all of this? I think this is one of the more genuinely exciting shifts I have seen in the AI hardware world in a good while. For years, the story has been the same. One company holds all the cards and everyone else pays up without much say. Trainium 3 does not flip the table overnight, but it hands real, credible choice to companies that had almost none of it. More competition means lower prices, and lower prices means more people get to build cool stuff that was simply too expensive yesterday. Or that should be the logic because, well, look at the current economic situation. You cannot guarantee anything. If it happens though, it'll be good for basically everyone, whether you're a giant lab or a 2-person startup working out of a bedroom. Amazon built a chip aimed squarely at the cost of doing AI, and from where I'm sitting, they landed the punch clean. If you got something out of this, do me a quick favor and smash that like button because it tells me you want more deep dives like exactly this one. And if you're not subscribed yet, fix that so you're around when the Trainium 4 story actually breaks, because you already know I'll be covering it. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll catch you in the next one.